like returning to a place that remains unchanged to find the way in which you yourself have altered. Nelson Mandela. Please join me in prayer. Holy and gracious God, this week I sat with the words from the text. I listened for your voice. My prayer is that I heard you well, and that my siblings in this place will be touched by the words that you have given to me that I share with them. It is with Christ that we pray. Amen. Take a moment to think about a year ago. Where were you? What was happening in your life? Has anything changed? Now think about 18 years ago. I'll help you. The year was 2007. Ask yourselves the same questions. Where were you? What was happening in your life? Has anything changed? 18 years is a long time. We tend to automatically think of it from a child coming into the world to graduating from high school. But it's also aging from the age of 18 to the age of 36, which for me feels like a really big leap. I won't do any of the other ages. We'll leave it at the age of 36. A lot can happen in 18 years. And for 18 years, this unnamed woman, we have to acknowledge that she is not named, has been bent over. She has been seeing the world from a very limited and a very dirty perspective. Think about it. She was living in a culture and a time when not everyone wore shoes. She would have relied on her hearing to be attuned to the noises and the voices around her. I imagine that she depended on her nose to detect whose smell was whose and where in the city she might be. For 18 years, she had to rely on everything but her eyes to get an idea of the whole world around her. Then on this one day, she enters the synagogue and she's appearing one way. She's engaging with the world in one particular way. In fact, she is being known in a certain one way. And she leaves that synagogue on that day a transformed person. She is suddenly seeing things in a whole new way. Physically, yes, but I have to imagine figuratively as well. And if this were just a simple story, we would be done. But like most things, most circumstances, most moments in life, there's always someone who ruins a good time. In Eugene Peterson's The Message, verse 14 from the Gospel of Luke chapter 13 is translated this way. The meeting place president, furious because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath, said to the congregation, 6 days have been defined as work days. Come on the 6th if you want to be healed, but not on the 7th, the Sabbath. Suddenly being healed is work? Being set free from what keeps you is work? Being transformed is work? Maybe. Should it be? Jesus, of course, did not even take a breath before responding. We actually see a reaction. Y'all know the difference: response, react. There was a church that was once deciding on if they wanted to offer a full-day preschool daycare center. For years, they had had a half-day program, But over the course of several months, they have been receiving an increasing number of calls from families who were looking for a full-day option. So like any good church, they formed a committee. The committee decided that they needed to discern if a full-day program was a viable option. As a part of the process, they had to determine if they would be fully licensed by the state. In that particular state at that particular time, this meant you would accept vouchers through the foster care program. And if you know anything about the foster care program, you know that families who open their homes to children who are in need of homes are often met with a myriad of experiences and challenges and scenarios. Many of the children who are a part of our foster care system are not coming from Norman Rockwell paintings or Instagram-ready posts. Their homes do not capture moments that we want to ever remember. There are no filters. There are no touch-ups. It is raw. And in a lot of cases, it is unimaginable. These children might have experienced or witnessed or been victims of events that not only can few of us comprehend, no matter our age, no matter our experience, it is still hard for us to imagine a human treating another human this way. So this particular committee, made up of upper middle class white professionals, that's important to know, began debating if they would be a part of the foster care voucher program. Would they accept children who might not look like their children and their grandchildren? Would they be okay with children who might need a little bit extra attention, who might need a little bit more compassion, a lot more understanding? As the conversation unfolded, it switched from the logistics of how a voucher program could work and if the preschool daycare budget could handle it, to the concept, to the conversation, to the, I would say, morality of, do we want these children? After all, one member said, we don't know the kinds of experiences they have. We don't know the kinds of language they use. We don't know what they might say and do around our children. There was a member of the committee who, as you can imagine, was completely appalled at this line of conversation, but waited to see if there would be someone else in the room who might speak up, voice their opinion. Surely there was someone at the table who would share their disbelief over the path that this conversation was going down. After a few moments of no one speaking up, in fact, people just looking down, the member said, well, I guess I'm trying to understand exactly what you're saying. Are you saying that if my spouse and I welcomed a foster child into our home and that child needed a lot more than what another child might need, that child has experienced a world that we might not be able to understand, that child might look different, act different, speak different, are you saying that you would not want that child to be a part of our daycare? The chair of the team sat there dumbfounded. Everyone around the table got even more uncomfortable than they had already been. And finally, after what seemed like an eternity, another member of the committee spoke up and said, of course not. Our children are our children. When we read this passage from Isaiah, we realize it's very easy to say, here's how it is, until it's not easy. Until suddenly we don't want to do the hard thing, the courageous thing, the fiery thing. Isaiah is delivering some pretty harsh words, isn't he? It's clear that Yahweh gave this beautiful vineyard with wonderful plans, a harvest that would produce sweet-smelling grapes. And instead, the fruit is foul, it is unusable, and actually it is very unacceptable to Yahweh and what Yahweh intended. So Yahweh decides to take back the gift. It's going to be destroyed. It's going to be wilted away into nothing. What starts off as a love song ends in a lament, a woe song, if you will. The contrast is hard, and it's probably very easy for us just to say, oh, that was so long ago. That was a scenario in a different time, in a different place. We are thousands of years away from that. Are we? Vineyards and churches and communities, they are very similar in the ways that they will live and breathe and thrive and grow. They have the do's and they have the don'ts. And I will be the first one to stand up and say, all of this can be very, very good and very, very necessary. If, however, those places become stagnant, become stinky, stop producing beautiful, delightful, mouth-watering fruit, it is necessary for us to say, why? And I wish that I had the answer, but sometimes we don't know. In both Luke and Isaiah, however, we see this beautiful possibility of transformation. You notice, I hope by now, I am not using the word healing, and we can talk about that later if you'd like. All week, the word transformation kept arising over and over again. In Luke, we see this woman who goes to the synagogue that day in her long time, 18-year condition. Did she know that Jesus, this teacher, this prophet, this miracle worker was going to be there? Had someone told her? Or had she been every single day, year after year, hoping and praying that maybe today it will be different? Did the workers in the vineyard just get lazy? Did they just decide one day, I just don't care anymore about this? Were they tired of the repetitive work? Did they just want someone else to do it? It seems that Yahweh had been very clear, but they chose not to tend to which they were given. So, Yahweh had to take care of things. It's harsh. It's too much. But what if Yahweh knew that there was a need for transformation? A transformation that was intense. A transformation that would shock the entire community in order for something new to come about. When we flip our Bibles and we get to Luke, we read that Jesus does indeed heal this woman. She is transformed. And so are the others in that space. But not everyone was so moved, at least not in a positive way. Jesus calls out those who were supporting the official, the meeting president, the leader. They were there. Perhaps they were nodding their heads. Perhaps they were doing a silent clap or raising their hands. They were in agreement with this man, this commenter. They were saying, yes, doesn't she get the rules? Doesn't she understand the do's and the don'ts? Do you think that you're special, ma'am? Do you think that this Jesus guy has some kind of authority that we in this place did not give him? In the NRSV, it says, when he said this, all of his opponents were put to shame, and the entire crowd was rejoicing at the things being done by him. But admittedly, I have to really love the way that Peterson puts it. When he put it that way, his critics were left looking quite silly and red-faced. The congregation was delighted and cheered him on. Some in the room were put to shame. They were left looking silly. They were red-faced. What from? Anger? Embarrassment? Both? Why are we so easily offended when things are not going the way that we want or expect or desire? Is it possible that maybe we actually don't want to be transformed? Are we so comfortable with our relationship with God, with our current status, so egotistical in our being that we think there is nothing that can transform us? This place, this church, y'all, we were founded on a desire for transformation. Those of you who have been here from the beginning or from the very early days, you came because you knew there was something more that God was trying to show you. That you wanted more from a community of people, a deep desire for transformation from where you were to where you wanted to be. And whether you came in the late 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, all the way up until today, something was stirring in you that said, I need to be changed and transformed. From our very beginning, there has been a focus on community, on outreach, on justice, and on inclusion. Paying attention to the needs of the people, recognizing the possibilities from newness, finding a way from the very beginning to be a we church. So while there may have been those throughout our 67 years who have asked questions, they have been naysayers, and maybe perhaps they have even rebuked what God was doing, God was still going to show up. God was still going to transform. God was still going to do what God was going to do. The people cheered and they delighted and they rejoiced. Why? Was it because someone had been able to suddenly stand up straight? Was it because leaders were being rebuked? They were being put in their place? They were being called out for their behavior? And they rejoiced because while maybe they weren't physically bent over, they had also been made to feel less than? Was it because they were witnessing everything that was occurring and they, in that moment, were also transformed in their being? I think it was all of the above and even more that I can't imagine. Perhaps they felt a new energy in the synagogue that they had never felt before. Perhaps they had an encounter with the divine that they had never had before, and they even wondered, will I ever have this again? Perhaps they were rejoicing because they felt the Spirit in a whole new, fresh way. Perhaps they felt freedom. After all, if this Jesus guy, this unofficial and this very official place could do something new and transformative, maybe I can too. That day something happened. Did anyone anticipate it? Maybe. Did anyone expect it? I don't know. Over the last 3 weeks, there are several questions that I have been repeatedly asked. I'm only going to focus on one this morning. Are we going back to 2 worship services? And then, most of the time, before I could even think of an answer, because I don't know, if you're not sure what it means to be Baptist, you are a part of that. Before I could give an answer, often people are saying, I love all of us being together. I love the energy that is happening in the worship center when we're all together. I love seeing people who usually attend a worship service I don't. I love not having to leave my Sunday school class early. I love not seeing my friends have to leave our Sunday school class early. I love feeling like I am a part of my full, whole, all church family. And so I've been sitting with all of these comments. And what has arisen for me is that many of us have experienced transformation. Perhaps what was started off as a logistical decision, summer's a time for travel, let's all be together so the worship center doesn't feel so empty. Perhaps something that was done out of logic has morphed, has turned, has to transformed into something deeply spiritual. A realization that being together as one body opens up the doors for new conversations, new friendships, new ways of discovering our similarities. Could this be a transformation? Could we be realizing that just because something is new, just because it wasn't my idea, you're the my in that scenario. Maybe because it's something I wasn't even sure I would like. Maybe you still don't. But what if maybe all of this has brought about a transformation within me, within us? I don't know about you, but I really want to be a good vineyard worker. I really want to be a good congregant, a good follower of Jesus who is ready for God to show up when I least expect it. Confessional. I do not want to be so trapped in my own opinions, my own beliefs, my own certainties, routines, and expectations that I am not ready for God to show up and do something audacious. I want to be someone who is attuned to the movement of God. I want to be someone who is paying attention to what God is doing around me and beyond me, rather than so consumed with what I want, what meets my desires most, that I can't even see God. I want to be ready for transformation, no matter how painful that may look, how painful it may feel, how truly unready I might be. Because the truth is, transformation is painful. I don't know, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that most of us, if not all of us in this room, can't know what it's like to be bent over physically for 18 years. But all of us have been in that moment where we've been sitting for too long. Perhaps it's the classic 5-hour from everything in Lubbock car ride. You've just been still for too long. And there's a pain that occurs when you first stand up. It's in your neck, it's in your back, it's in your hip, it's in your shoulder, it's wherever it is. But if we're fortunate, after a few moments, that pain kind of subsides and we move on. There's a few moments where we're uncomfortable, but we adjust. This woman, again, she doesn't have a name, y'all. This woman who was transformed went from being bent over to being upright. She probably experienced a lot of pain. She had to learn to walk in a different way. She had to learn to encounter the world in a different way. I imagine she was incredibly overwhelmed and possibly even scared. But my bigger imagination hope is that there were so many people in her community who came alongside her to help her. They walked with her as she was finding her balance. They were sharing in her transformation and sharing with her what they were experiencing through their own transformation. We are in a transformation process together. Mine's going to look different than yours. Yours is going to look different from theirs. But what if we could be uncomfortable together while the transformation is happening? What if we say, we can trust that God is at the center of this transformation? God is leading and guiding and working in ways that we could not have imagined before. So, what if we could set aside what we have come to know and to expect? What if we could get curious about how God might show up in this space and time? I believe that God is always transforming us. Will you join me in that belief? Amen.